Son doesn't know what to do, right? Here's his dad barreling down the road. Son who was dead is alive again, right? It's that zealous. Don't care what I look like. Don't care what is seen. Instead, I'm just going to passionately pursue this relationship. I want to be in a knowing, participatory relationship with this individual. And so because of that combination is why I say love is a vortex, okay? I've often described you before, joking, that I get caught up in the YouTube vortex, okay? Man, YouTube, whoever designed that, they're brilliant, okay? Because they have a way of feeding me video after video after video, and I'm like, I'm watching, dart throwing competitions. I didn't even know anything about throwing darts, right? But somehow you end up there, right? You're like, this is fascinating, right? I can't wait to see if he's going to win. I don't know any of the competitors. I know nothing, right? But here you go. The way the YouTube vortex works is absolutely amazing. But the reason I call it that is because it has a way of sucking you in. It has a way of capturing your attention, and then you're like, where did 2 hours just go, right? I don't know how that happened, okay? That is what a vortex is like. And love, properly applied, properly understood, is like that. It can suck up all the time, the attention, the energy, just because there's such a passionate pursuit of knowing, participation. I want to participate here. I want to be in relationship to this person or this thing. I love this, right? And because of that, it has a vortex nature to it when it's rightly applied, all right? So that's the means and ends. They make a vortex if you understand love correctly. Now, let's look into some application of this. But before we do, I've got to talk about a concept I found this week called the ideal self, the ought self, and the actual self. And the reason is because this applies perfectly to this concept of love. I was reading a book this week by Daniel Pink, actually, The Power of Regret. I was just telling you about this, right? And I've never heard these terms before, but it was almost a throwaway phrase in the book. He devoted like a paragraph, maybe, to the concept of the ideal self, the ought self, and the actual self. And then I was like, this is providential because it perfectly ties in with the concept of love, okay? What is the ideal self, the ought self, and the actual self? Well, I've got a quote here. According to Daniel Pink, the actual self is the collection of attributes that a person currently has, okay? This is who you currently are, all of your stuff, okay? You're good, you're bad, and you're ugly, okay? That's your actual self. Now, the ideal self is the self that a person wants to be, okay? That's how you envision yourself. Ideally, I would be like this. And then finally, the ought self is the self that a person believes they should be, okay? This one is one where you're like, I'm not living right, I ought to live differently, right? There's almost this imposition of oughtness to it, okay? Now, many mistakes in your life come up because you mix these three up, okay? You mix these three up, and it leads to all sorts of problems, errors, mistakes in your life. We have done ministries and events in this church because some of you were speaking to me out of your ideal self, but not out of your actual self, okay? Try to understand here, right? Like you have an ideal of where we want to be, where we want to go, what I want to do, but the actual self was not able to catch up, okay? Not able to catch up. The ideal self wanted to be there. The actual self couldn't make it, all right? Now, this is a big issue when it comes to love, okay? This is a big issue when it comes to love because I think many of us are often speaking out of our ideal self and our ought self when it comes to the topic of love. If we're talking about love, who we love, what we love, etc., we speak out of our ideal self and our ought self, but I think we rarely speak out of our actual self. Let me give an example, all right? This doesn't paint me in the best light, but perhaps it will be helpful to you, okay? Now, when I took the pastorate over 5 years ago, I struggle personally, some of you guys know this about me, some of you don't. I struggle personally to love people, okay? That's a struggle of mine. I'm not naturally like just man, I love everyone, people are so great, they're so amazing. That's not me, okay? So when I first took this position over 5 years ago, Pastor Tanner's love for people, my ideal self was maxed out. I'm a pastor now, loving people, that's right. Of course I should love people. I need to do it. And my ought self, right? Of course a pastor loves people. If there's anything a pastor is, it's someone who loves people. Here was the actual self, guys. I'm down here, okay? I'm down here. And so I'm sitting there struggling to love people, even though I know I ought to love people, and even though I know the ideal version of myself loves people. In terms of actual, I'm struggling with loving people, okay? And that was something that was really, really difficult for me and continues to be a challenge and a struggle for me to this day, all right? This disparity between your ideal self, your ought self, and your actual self can lead to many problems. And again, especially when it comes to love. Because oftentimes, when you're speaking about the things you love, when you're talking with others about loving things you love in your life, you're speaking out of your ideal self, you're speaking out of your ought self, you're not speaking out of your actual self, okay? Well, if that is true, then how can you speak out of your actual self? Where does that come from? It comes from the vortex itself, okay? So let me talk a little bit about the vortex itself. The vortex itself is a combination of everything that I've said so far, okay? Love is an action because actions are representative of your actual self, not your ideal self, not your ought self. When you act, that is who you are. Your actions are your actual self, period, full stop. Don't get me wrong, I might have certain ideals, I might have certain oughts, but at the end of the day, my actions demonstrate the self who I really am. I don't know if I put it up here. I did. 1 John 3:18 says this, "Little children, let us not love in word or talk, but in deed and truth." Loving in word and talk is loving according to the ideal self or the ought self, okay? You're expressing who you wish you were or who you feel like you should be, but you're not expressing who you actually are. The love that you actually are, who you love, what you love, is actually demonstrated by your deeds. That's your true love. Your true love is demonstrated by your deeds and your actions, how you live, okay? When you boil it down, if I can look at your life about, that's what you love. If you spend all of your time, effort, energy focusing on one thing, but say you love another thing, then your vortex clearly demonstrates where your love lies, okay? Who or what is caught up in your vortex? And think, I want you to think about this, okay? Think about it according to each self. What does your ideal self vortex? I think many of us would probably say, God, family, friends, right? My ideal self has those as my life's vortices, right? But then, if I were to ask myself, what does my actual self vortex? Is that what it looks like? If somebody were to look at my life from outside and I couldn't talk, they could only see my actions, and they were asked, what does this man love? Would they repeat back, God, family, friends? I'm sorry to say that in my case, no, he would not, okay? No, he would not. And if you're anything like me, something similar. What does your ought self say that you ought to be vortexing? Again, God, family, friends, like the important things in life, right? That's what I ought to be vortexing. That's what my ideals say, but my actual self doesn't match. My actual self doesn't match, okay? I've got this one here for you. Pastor Tanner's love for ice cream, okay? Some of y'all know me. My ideal self is down here. Now, I got a little bit of a bar on the ideal self because I like to say I enjoy good things in life, okay, including a nice bowl of ice cream or 5. Wait, that's the actual self, sorry. So ideal self is there. Ought self, now I don't know about you, but I listened to some podcasts, I read some books, and they said, your necessary allotment of ice cream for the year is 0, right? And that feels bad. I don't know if that's true. I also read a post that said, ice cream is a superfood. I saved that post because they're expressing what I already want to believe. I'm digressing. My actual self maxed out on Pastor Tanner's love for ice cream, right? Just loving it, okay? And it just completely maxed out, And look, for some of us like me, the holiday time is really hard, all right? The holiday time is... Some of you had told me, you're like, Tanner, you seem to love that suit. You wear it every Sunday. It's the only one that fits left, guys. It's the only one, okay? Once you start seeing variety in the suit, you can tell me, hey, congratulations on losing some weight, Tanner. I'll say thank you because that's how you know. That's how you know.